So, what happens when a country's top intelligence official gives a warning that a lot of people don't want to hear, but others think is way overdue? Well, in late 2025, America got a front row seat. We're going to break down a really controversial speech by DNI Tulsi Gabbard, the huge backlash, and the firestorm it kicked off online, all based on a detailed report from the news outlet Shasta Unfiltered. This right here, this single line from the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, is what started the whole thing. It's a powerful and, let's be honest, a pretty provocative claim. So let's actually unpack what she meant, the distinction she was trying to make, and why these words became such a major flashpoint. For this explainer, we're really focusing on three things. First, the speech itself. Second, the totally divided reaction it got. And third, how the whole conversation just blew up online. It's a story that tells you a lot about words, warnings, and how information just rockets around in our world today. Okay, so let's start at the beginning, the speech itself. And you gotta understand, this wasn't some boring policy update. No, this was a sharp, direct warning from the Director of National Intelligence, delivered to a very receptive crowd at Turning Point USA's America Fest in Phoenix, an event that's, known for its conservative audience. Gabbard was really careful to frame her entire argument around one critical point. She kept insisting she wasn't talking about the religion of Islam. She was talking about a specific political agenda. And she argued that this agenda is a direct attack on the U.S. Constitution and those core American values, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Yeah, this whole distinction between ideology and religion, it's absolutely central to her argument and the entire firestorm that came after. So it's really worth digging into that specific point a little deeper, because it's the key to understanding the whole controversy. And here's another key line from her speech. Gabbard said, look, yeah, this ideology is what fuels violent groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIS. But then she argued that the greater danger, at least in her view, wasn't violent at all. It was a quiet, political push that she claimed was meant to change society from the inside out. So you might be asking, what exactly did she mean by Islamist ideology? Well, she defined it as a political movement that wants to replace legal systems like the U.S. Constitution with Sharia law. That's a system based on Islamic principles that would govern, pretty much every part of public and private life. That was the specific threat she was pointing to. So how did people react to this pretty intense warning? Well, the response was immediate, but it was also weirdly uneven. It was this mix of really loud condemnation from some corners, and then what felt like a surprising silence from others, especially from the mainstream media. I mean, it's like people were hearing two completely different speeches. On one side, you have Gabbard's take, this is an existential threat to our Constitution, and on the other, you have groups like the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, calling her words inflammatory and delusional and demanding she either take it back or just resign. Totally opposite interpretations. And the media reaction was just as split. The major mainstream news outlets, they pretty much ignored the speech. But conservative media outlets jumped all over it, amplifying her message. Meanwhile, the full speech just kind of lived on through clips on places like YouTube and C-SPAN. What that did was create these totally different information bubbles around the whole thing. So, with the big media outlets mostly quiet, the whole conversation moved and got way more intense online. And this is where the speech's main ideas didn't just get talked about. They sort of took on a life of their own, mixing with stories and narratives that were already out there. Her warnings clearly hit a nerve with a lot of people, especially on X. You started to see users sharing what they claimed was evidence of a quiet strategy to undermine American democracy, which echoed that exact nonviolent threat Gabbard was talking about in her speech. One theory that really blew up was this alleged two-front strategy that people were tying to a 1991 Muslim Brotherhood document. The idea was, on the internal front, you build these isolated communities and schools to avoid fitting in. Then, on the external front, you work to get inside American institutions while calling anyone who criticizes you an Islamophobe to shut them down. And once that theory was out there, people started connecting it to all kinds of other things they were seeing online. There were viral posts of an Iranian man giving a warning, another video of a Somali migrant in Minnesota supposedly saying the goal was to make America an Islamic state. That 1991 memo got brought up again and again as a blueprint, and people started highlighting lawsuits about public money going to Islamic schools. For many online, these didn't feel like random events anymore. They looked like pieces of a much bigger puzzle. So what does all this add up to? Well, it's pretty clear that this speech didn't create some brand new division. Instead, it was like it exposed this deep, really sensitive fault line that was already there in American society, and it just dragged a very difficult conversation right out into the open. And hey, just for full transparency, all the information we've been breaking down here comes from that really comprehensive reporting by Shasta Unfiltered. They're a news outlet up in Northern California that put all these different threads of the story together. At the end of the day, this whole debate really boils down to a fundamental clash. On one side, you have these warnings of what some people call a civilization jihad, a slow, quiet subversion of Western society. And on the other side, you have these very deep fears that this kind of talk just fuels dangerous Islamophobia. It's a really tense conversation that gets right to the heart of national identity and security. And all of that leaves us with a huge question, one that this whole controversy really puts front and center. How does free and open society actually protect its core principles when it's dealing with these kinds of deep, polarizing ideological fights? There are no easy answers here, that's for sure, but it's a question this speech forced everyone to think about.